Good day, everyone. Today I'm going to present a topic entitled Uncovering the Issues of Fake News from the Malaysian Legal Perspective, Dilemma and Challenges. Fake news. The impact of fake news on a diverse country like Malaysia cannot be underestimated. The spread of fake news can cause panic and disrupt social harmony, leading to public unrest. The argument is whether what content should be considered fake news and which should be excluded, because fake news is subjective. What is true now may not be true later, and rumor can turn into real in the future, which make it very subjective. Some scholars have always associated fake news with political agenda, but it is not always true, which again indicate the complexity of the issue. Most of the Malaysian study covered quite a lot of angle and perspective, but most of these studies dependent on Western definition of fake news and fails to provide the local context in defining fake news. While most of the Western scholars they will attempt to define fake news as news that mimics the form of mainstream news but fails to follow the code of media ethics. And some of these scholars also differentiate the terms of fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. Malaysian scholars refer fake news to, sometimes they use the term misinformation and sometimes they use the term fake news. And in combating fake news, there are several Malaysian laws. For example, Penal Codes, Printing Presses and Publication Act, Communication and Multimedia Act, Anti-Fake News Act, and Emergency Ordinance. However, concern has been raised about the vague definition of false information because the broad definition can silence the voices of the people. For example, Anti-Fake News Act has never really drawn a very clear guideline of what can be considered as fake news. Instead, the anti-fake news law includes various forms of information, words, content, voices, and even ideas. So this has blurred the line of what can be considered as fake news. This research utilized a quantitative approach for the analysis of the fake news issue. And a total of 193 High Court judicial cases was extracted from LexisNexis Malaysia. According sheet is used to record and analyze the data. This is the sample of High Court judicial record. And for my research finding, there are 6 main issues or main themes that I found from my research finding. The first one is one-sided news. While the relationship between freedom of expression, media freedom to publish content, and defamation law in Malaysia is complex and can be challenging to navigate their interplay. While this is especially true in a nation with diverse political view and varying social and economic background. So one of the cases where Malaysia Kini was sued for defamation and malicious falsehood in response to the article and video about the Bukit Komang villages in Raup, Pahang and the mining activity. So when it comes to reporting and defending against defamation lawsuit, journalists often rely on the defense of responsible journalism. But again, under the condition where the report was deemed one-sided, lacking fairness and objectivity, even though we've cited a credible source, could be considered as false reporting or fake news. Second, third-party source. If journalists fail to verify information directly from the authority source, then journalists may need to bear the responsibilities for any inaccuracy in reporting. For instance, there was a case where the journalist wrote a news based on video clip of the authorities on the press conference and was posted on social media. But due to the absence of verification from the source, the journalist was sued for publishing defamatory statement. This proved the subjectivity of the issue, especially living in this digital era where information is accessible. So there is no clear guideline of what can be copied and what cannot, even though it is from a credible source. Third one is the use of words. When it comes to the use of words, it's very dependent on the context of writing and the individual interpretation. For example, there was a case where journalists wrote a news based on news article and tweet. but you face a suit for misinterpretations because there is no direct clarification from the writer and lead to the use of the wrong word in reporting. But again, everyone's understanding of the issue is different, and what can and cannot be considered as false is very subjective. Fourth is no direct indication. And the questions of whether an article can be deemed fake news even without directly mentioning a person's name is complex. The court rules that if evidence indicating that the article is referring to a specific individual, it can still be considered defamatory. On the other hand, if the article makes a general statement that can refer to anyone, it will not be considered as defamatory. And in some of the cases where the statement was written without a direct mention, but the court later determined that it was indirectly referring to the person, can be deemed defamatory. Like in the case of the Sultan of Johor, right? Even though the defendants successful in defending themselves because he was able to prove that this statement was more on a matter of comment or opinion and related to a matter of public interest. But these cases demonstrate the complexity of information, as writing can be abstract and done from various perspectives. The fifth is anonymous writer. While the widespread availability of content creation through the internet has raised the issue of internet anonymity, because writer may choose to publish anonymously. For example, one of the cases involved a blogger, but we cannot, the court failed to prove the identity of the blogger. So under these kind of conditions, it again highlights the difficulty in determining the accountability for incorrect publications when the writer identity is unverified. So a thorough investigation into the meaning, context, and writing of the content become impossible in such a situation. And the last one is freedom of expressions. Well, with the advancement of technology that have been granted us a freedom to write and express ourselves, the question is to what extent these expressions are allowed or are considered self-opinion, and whether jokes and parodies allowed or can be considered as fake news or defamatory. In the case of Muhammad Fahmi, the famous Malaysian political graphic designer, faced the charge under the Communication and Multimedia Act for sharing a false communication with the intentions of causing offense. So he posted a caricature on his Facebook page portraying the former Prime Minister Najib Razak as a clown. Even though Muhammad Fahmi argued that the post was meant to be parody and political satire, criticizing the authority for restricting the freedom of expression. But the court held that such statement, even though could not be restricted and were not considered a crime, but if the statement has a motive to hurt others, it still can have a conflict with the law. However, this definition of content that might hurt others is vague, and it's very difficult to clearly establish what can and cannot be expressed on personal social media page, as everyone has different perspective. Well, when we talk about the press industry level, media, in order to ensure that the news is accurately and fairly reported, they have to adhere to a certain code of ethics. One way is to include a credible source. However, there is no clear procedure provided to journalists in citing the source from the news gathering process to news reporting and news writing, and this has put the journalists in dilemma. And with absence of what can and cannot be considered as offensive writing, this had led to another problem of self-censorship, which restrict the journalists from expressing themselves or writing the news in a critical manner. Even though it is not wrong to punish those who purposely create misleading content to deceive people. However, more often than not, the fact on the lack of transparency of information is often ignored. For example, journalists may not get sufficient information to report, or maybe they get a very unclear statement in writing the data, or maybe due to the authoritarian practice, they might not get the answer to answer their questions in reporting news. While in combating fake news is never an individual responsibility, it's a collective effort from everyone. from the government policies to individual responsibility, from citizens to media outlets, authority source and social media platform. We have to ensure that our content shared is with credible sources and with the intentions, of serving the public interest. So together we can protect the integrity of information and preserve the democratic ideals that underpin our society. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.